Hi, welcome to another episode of the Principal Liner Notes podcast. This is Sean Gaylord coming to you with episode 126. And as I record this particular episode, it's being done with great love and admiration for an album that is very close to my heart, an album that has not only changed my life, but has probably changed your life or maybe the life of someone you know. It is an album that is celebrating a birthday, an album that came out on June 1st, 1967. And I just happen to have one of my many copies here. And that album is the Sgt. Pepper Lonely Hearts Club Band album by the Beatles. And this is the stereo remix of the album by Giles Martin, son of producer George Martin. And this is an album that I have many versions of, an album that has been celebrated, commemorated, released, re-released, reissued, re-examined since its inception upon release in 1967. And we'll just take a quick look through this album. The album is famous for many things. The album cover, it's iconic, and all kinds of mystery and intrigue that has been associated with the front album cover. You got the back cover, which this was the first pop album to feature lyrics. You have all of the lyrics from Lennon and McCartney, and of course George Harrison. And here are the Beatles here in their Sgt. Pepper uniforms. This is also a gatefold album cover as well. Again, another iconic picture. And then if you picked up an original copy, or if you've gotten a reissue, the album came with, dig this, I can pull it out here, cutouts that you could form your own Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band and put on and cut out the sergeant stripes and little mustache here if you couldn't grow one like the Beatles had, or Sgt. Pepper, little Sgt. Pepper buttons. So just truly an album that is a splendid time that is guaranteed for all. It's an album that is seen as a concept album. It is an album that is an exemplar for excellence, an album that is an exemplar for innovation, an album, when I first heard it in the summer of 1980 at the very young age of 10, I was blown away. Speechless, stunned, and it's an album that I have revisited and re-examined and reflected upon and been inspired by and been motivated by. It's an album that when I was a high school English teacher, I took the lyrics from She's Leaving Home and integrated that song into our poetry unit. It's an album, when I've talked about an album that's like a movie for your ears, or an album that can be anything you want it to be, or that entry point into literary and lyrical analysis. This was an album that I kept in the classroom. In fact, it was not this particular copy, but I had a copy of the Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band that was displayed proudly in my classroom back during my high school English teacher days. It's also an album that I would refer to when I became a principal. It's an album that I would reference in terms of telling a story, or using the album as an example to frame a story for the faculty that I served at the time, as we were pursuing an innovative turnaround, and we were looking for examples to highlight our collaborative efforts in service of kids. So I reference this album as a teaching lesson for teachers, and it's an album that became the basis for my first book, which came out in 2018. And that book it's right here, The Pepper Effect. And in the Pepper Effect, I explore the influence of the Beatles on my life, my teaching, my leadership. I use the Sgt. Pepper's album as an exemplar for not only a classic album or an album that resonates with excellence, but an album that, if you listen to it, they're kind of like four pieces, or what I call four riffs, which constitute the Pepper Effect. And these four riffs can be a lesson for you, an exemplar for you, or an excuse to innovate, or perhaps it's that inspiration that you need to take your schoolhouse or your classroom or your organization to another level, just like the Beatles stepped into uncharted territory and set out to make an album that stands as a masterpiece. Well, that can happen in your schoolhouse. That can happen, that masterpiece thinking, this Pepper Effect. And the four riffs of the Pepper Effect go like this: believe in your vision, believe in your masterpiece, believe in your collaborators, and ignore the naysayers. Those four riffs constitute the Pepper Effect. And I use those riffs throughout the book to tell this story of this bar band from Liverpool that had a great vision to share their love of music with the world. And that all kind of culminated in the Sgt. Pepper album, in the story and saga of the Beatles. So June 1st, which is when this podcast is airing, is kind of like Sgt. Pepper Day, and you'll probably hear, or I hope that you'll hear on your radio station or wherever you download or stream music. There may be some nod or reference to Sgt. Pepper. There may be the airing of a documentary, perhaps. If you have a copy of the Pepper Effect, you might revisit a chapter that inspired you, and I'm honored and grateful for that. But also, not only are we celebrating the Sgt. Pepper album and its release on June 1st, but right around the corner is the release of this book, the Pepper Effect, which came out June 6th, 2018, and it has a 5th anniversary that we will be celebrating and commemorating on this podcast. In the next few episodes, I will devote an episode to each of the four riffs of the Pepper Effect. Believe in your vision, believe in your masterpiece, believe in your collaborators, and ignore the naysayers. I've talked about this throughout the podcast in the 4 seasons that the Principal Liner Notes podcast has been around, and because we're coming upon year 5 of the publication of the Pepper Effect, I thought maybe we could spend some time together exploring the Pepper Effect, revisiting the 4 riffs, and making some connections, not just to the Beatles, but also making some connections to how the 4 riffs of the Pepper Effect can apply to your practice. And we'll look at some examples and share some stories around that. So I'm excited for the next few upcoming episodes of the Principal Liner Notes podcast to share in my love of the Beatles and this album, the Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band album, and then connected to the 5th anniversary of the publication of the Pepper Effect. So happy birthday to Sgt. Pepper. Happy birthday to the Pepper Effect. And I'm very grateful for you, the listener and viewer of the Principal Liner Notes podcast, for tuning in. And I look forward to engaging in some collaborative conversation on the Pepper Effect. And hopefully along the way, we will revisit and maybe create a masterpiece or inspire future masterpieces in our discussion. This is Sean Gaylor. This is the Principal Liner Notes podcast. Thank you for tuning in, and don't forget to share with the world your dreams and your visions, because your dreams and your visions and your ideas help make the world a better place, and the world is better for that because of you.